from the National Skill Development Corporation. I welcome you all for today's webinar on online assessment and proctoring for short-term skill training. To set the context for the webinar today, as you are all aware that the current COVID-19 pandemic is disrupting our everyday way of living. Besides being a global health crisis, it is also a major social and economic crisis. And in relation to our work and education, it is affecting the way we work and learn in an unprecedented manner. In a matter of weeks, coronavirus has changed the world of work and the sphere of learning and development. It has challenged individuals, employers, and workers to adapt to online modalities in all spheres of life. This is an urgent need to respond to address the crisis and the impact of learning. If we want to ensure that the shift of distance and online learning both meets immediate learning needs and prepare us for more effective pivot and skill systems in the future, a number of key measures needs to be taken, such as access to internet, expand access for learners to online digital applications and platforms, support teachers and trainers to operate in the new environment, provide support, career guidance, and digital skills development for learners, which will strengthen the systems for recognition and validation of digital learning, increase investment in digital solutions for practical skills development, and improve social dialogue and coordination amongst education, training institutions, and employment services. Keeping this in mind, the webinar today will cover the understanding of online assessments and various aspects of online remote proctoring, applicability of advantages of online proctoring tools, various tools for online proctoring, the existing and the unexplored, and we'll also have some demonstrations on proctoring. We have with us Ms. Vandana Bhatnagar, the Chief Program Officer for NSDC, who will be our keynote speaker, and Dr. Sandhya Chintala, the Executive Director of IT/ITS Skill Council. Before I ask Vandana to address to give her keynote address, just to give a brief about Vandana. Vandana Bhatnagar is with the NSDC from past 3 years. She is managing the technical engagements related to research, analytics, occupational standards, and learning content. She is also a key member of the senior leadership team, which plays an integral role on developing NSDC's business development strategies to drive skill operation through its robust partner network. Vandana has over 25 years of professional experience in banking, development finance institutions, and applied research. Prior to joining NSDC, Vandana was associated with World Bank as Senior Institutional Development Specialist, Water Department Global Practices. We have Sandhya, who is the main speaker for the session. I would also like to introduce Sandhya. Dr. Sandhya Chintala, as I said, she is the Executive Director of the IT/ITS Skill Council. She is also the Vice President of the NASSCOM, which is the Chamber of Commerce of the IT and BPM industry. Her role at NASSCOM includes providing the roadmap for IT BPM industry, education initiatives, programs with a vision to develop education strategy, capacity building, assessment and evaluation, the development of industry standards to facilitate a quality talent pool, liaising between industry, academia, and government, making India the preferred global destination for all IT and BPM ITS requirements. Dr. Chintala has a rich background in international and national education management. As an educationist, some of her research publication and activities are related to the successful development and implementation of educational frameworks, enabling change management and sustainable governance processes, technology-enabled teaching, learning methods, e-content solutions, and the design and development of quality assurance strategies. Dr. Chintala brings to this ecosystem 37 years of experience to facilitate talent transformation and acquisition for this industry body. I'm sure today's webinar will be enriching with the experience which she will bring to all of us. I would now request Vandana Bhatnagar to give her keynote address.
Thank you, Rekha. I'd like to also join your team in welcoming our speakers and participants to this webinar. This is an extremely important topic in today's context, the topic of assessments as a whole, and within that, specifically the focus on online assessments. At this point, really, we are at an inflection point in some ways. You have referenced, of course, the ongoing disruption caused by the COVID pandemic. But we are also at the same time seeing a transition happening in terms of increased regulatory focus and strengthening of processes related to various aspects of the skilling value chain. And assessments is a very central part of that. In addition, the government national scheme on PMKVY is also coming to an end, and in due course, there would be transitioning to another program. And so this is a time when a lot of effort has been going on to review the processes and see where are the interventions required to strengthen the quality of these various programs. And the emphasis is on ensuring the learning outcomes that are envisaged under these various programs. Assessments is, of course, one of the core pillars of the entire skilling journey and the training delivery system. It is not only something that confirms the learning outcomes for students and training providers, but where we have programs which are funded by government or other organizations, they provide valuable evidence and analysis on the efficacy of these programs as well. So over the years, NSDC's teams, along with the sector skill councils, have been, of course, working to evolve the assessment systems that have been implemented in our programs. And these have been getting increasingly refined and sophisticated while adapting to the hugely diverse training environments which exist in our country. But now with the adoption of technology over the years, there is now a greater emphasis for innovative ways to provide assessments which are accurate, transparent, and more credible in many ways, and also importantly, very scalable. So most of our sector skill councils have adopted online assessment systems in various courses to different degrees. But in our consultations and dialogue with stakeholders, it's been observed that there is a fair amount of variety of terms which have been used in having different interpretations in terms of assessments, and specifically online assessments. They have been referenced for very different kinds of assessment methodologies and their administration. So the view was that we need to look at how can we make the processes followed for online assessments adhere to a more common understanding of protocols and standards. And as part of that, there have been efforts done to engage with stakeholders and experts, including international ones. We had a workshop with the Singapore Polytechnic jointly with them, with all our stakeholders, which revealed very important takeaways on the processes being followed. So informed by all of that, the teams, along with the SSCs, have taken forward this important effort to define and develop standardized protocols related to online assessments, apart from other aspects also of the assessment systems. And the important piece of that would be also about sharing that knowledge with all our ecosystem. And this webinar is an important part of that effort. We are grateful to Dr. Sandhya Chantala and our colleagues and partners from the assessment agencies who are joining us today, who will be bringing a lot of valuable expertise based on actual experience of the kinds of interventions that are now being deployed and are available for other stakeholders to adopt in their operations. So I once again appreciate the effort made by the NSDC team and all our partners to put this webinar together. And I do hope that our attendees would find this interaction and this knowledge sharing to be useful to them, and it would encourage them to adopt some of these systems and technologies in their own operations to improve the quality of assessments that are being taken up in the ecosystem. And of course, to enable us to adapt to the new normal, as is being called in the post-lockdown scenario, we would imagine that there will be a complete shift needed in terms of the processes to digital formats. So these interventions are aimed towards facilitating that. So all the best, and look forward to the discussions today. Thank you, Rekha.
Thank you, Vandana. Now I would request Dr. Sandhya Chintala to start the session.
Thank you so much. Just a minute, let me just share the system. Can you, sorry. Is this, can you see the screen, all of you? Can you see the screen? Hello? Hello?
Yeah, Dr. Sandhya, please
Can
go
you
ahead.
see the screen? Can you see the screen? Should I go ahead?
Yeah, please go
Right,
ahead.
okay. So good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for this opportunity, Ms. Vandana, Rekha, Bhumika, and Meher, who made all this possible. A phenomenal requirement, specifically in consideration of the COVID period. Now, this is actually a requirement not only during COVID, but post-COVID. What the COVID has done is fast forward what we had planned for a decade down the line, and it has drastically changed the way we live, the way we are going to work, and of course, therefore, the way we are going to learn. So in this particular scenario, what we have done for, as just as an example, the impact is cross-functional, but what the technology industry has done is that almost 85% of the workers now are going to work from home. And we feel that the new normal will be that we will continue to do so, and it will set into position in the next 2 years. 2 years, because they think about an 18-month period is when there will be a vaccine for this. But by the time things are less, because cost cutting has become a big process. People prefer to work from home, and wherever possible, we find that this is going to become the new normal. So educational institutions, non-formal learning institutions, training providers, all of them will find that the way we're going to live and work will actually dictate the way we're going to be skilled and also be made available. In the gig economy, you can be working anytime, anywhere, any place for whichever company that you want, and do it, spread your time as you wish. So in that particular process and consideration of that same, we found that we have companies like TCS, etc., saying that even after the COVID goes away, 75% of my people will work from home. So a bellwether company like that announcing something of that nature publicly sets the fold for all other IT companies and every other member company in this technology space or related companies like e-commerce, like retail, travel, tourism, it can be media and entertainment. Everybody will start working from home unless it is necessary. So once that happens, you're having people studying at a particular learning center and then moving forward and going to a classroom will all become virtual. So which means that this whole process, unless we're able to rejig our learning programs and our assessment and evaluation of competency of individuals, it's very critical that we embrace this new way, because otherwise we'll not be able to build digital India in a fast forward manner. We particular, and I also see as NSDC does, that this is a great opportunity. Though there is a lot of problems and how the economy is struggling with the GDP and GST and all other problems, we also see the positive light. There is no pollution, the mobility levels has gone, energy consumption is reduced, spend is reduced, etc. But the economy has to move. And for that, it is very, very critical that we bring in this new normal. The new normal will be working, learning, living, as well as educating ourselves and assessing ourselves remotely. So we have to take the whole examination system to the individual rather than expect the individual to come. So having said this, the second part of this presentation, it will be a small scenario that I will present to all of you on the remote, online, as well as remote proctoring process of enablement of competency assessments. I will be joined also in my program with Mr. Tarun from Metal or Induslink, will be Mr. Siddharth from CALM, as well as from Mr. Dhruv, who is from Aeon. These are three of the 413 assessment agencies that is collectively and actively involved in this country in the space of online evaluation. But having said that, not all of them have a tool which enables online proctoring and remote proctoring. So I'll explain these two processes, because anytime anybody sees this, they get a little worried and say, hey, how is it that this particular process is going to be enabled, simply because they will feel that there's so much risk. So let me take away those aspersions from you. And yeah, I hope you're able to see today. Now, our first thing is on the key definitions. What is digital assessment? As Ms. Vandana has also articulated, that it's really problematic when there are so many thoughts and ideas going around. But while we do this session, it'll be for about 15 to 20 minutes. Then we will have each one of our assessment agency leads, actually who are using their own tools, give you an idea of how it looks. And then we are open to a whole scenario of question answer sessions with you. But if you have something, please post your questions and answers on the side, that we will be able to pick it up. And if you're not able to actually complete all the question and answers within the time frame that we have, be assured that we will answer and send these reports back to you early Friday. Thank you so much. Let me start this off. So here, if you have a digital assessment, it could be either a formative assessment during the period of your training of your candidates or at the end of it, right? There are two ways to do it. One is your internet based and one is the LAN based. If it's internet, all of you know how it is with the browser. You go on and you're able to use it and do assessments. This type of assessment is absolutely good when you have the proper bandwidth and you have a device like a smart cell phone, or you will have a laptop or an iPad, or you have a desktop. It's absolutely fine. But when you do not have, in remote areas especially, when you do not have what do you call it, the requisite bandwidth, then it is important that you have a LAN base, that you use one of your laptops or instruments as your local server, and then be able to take this forward. Right? So the next one is what you're talking about, remote proctoring with assessors. So when you do the normal proctoring, and it's an online exam using any one of these devices, you are usually having all the students gather in one training center for a particular training provider, and then make this available. All the students gather there, they will open their systems, go into a user ID password, and they will do it. Here the role of the individual who's invigilating is called the proctor. He's not central to the system. Like an assessor will actually be able, he's a subject matter expert and asks you questions appropriately and takes information of you, makes note, gives you scores, and then evaluates you and gives you a certificate of competence. In this case, a proctor will just be like an invigilator, enable you to start the systems, see that if you have any troubleshooting at that point, let you know that the exam as it moves forward will not be enabled by him. It's a randomized paper which comes from online. So there is an AI support system on this, and all these processes will have a webcam so that they can constantly look at you. So when somebody is doing this exam, not in a center, a training center, or in a school or a college, but sitting at home or any place, then there is a possibility to switch the webcam on and somebody is looking at you. Usually it's a ratio of 1:20 or 1:50. That will be an online proctored exam. But if there is nobody, and there is an AI system which is enabled there also, so that it tells you that all of this is being recorded. But if there is no physical person still watching you through the internet, then it is a totally monitored by the system itself, and the machine and the AI takes it on. That is called remote proctoring. But then both have got the pros and cons, and we will be able to explain that to you, right? So I'm moving on from here. So basically some of the assessments that are conducted, which is only AI based and it is recorded, right? That is the remote proctoring. But there are some assessments that are conducted which are remote, but with an assessor. This is a blended way of assessing. That is, the theory part of it is done remotely through using an AI tool. AI means artificial intelligence tool. But the practical part of it is that it is videoed and uploaded, and therefore it is made available for all to see. So the assessor then interacts with the candidates and asks viva questions, situational questions from the candidates, and rates the practical. So even now I've heard that a PT exam, physical training, student is doing the exercise, and then he videos himself, uploads the video. So not only is the student knowing how to do the competent in the subject area, but also has to learn how to upload the results on an online platform. The SME who sits on the other end will evaluate it and can also ask viva questions or situational questions and do this. This is very appropriate in the manufacturing state, in the healthcare system processes, in the construction area, but it does need device and it does need the requisite bandwidth. So these are the risks in that particular space, but it is feasible, and we all have to work together in a collaborative partnership, because now the time has come, whether it's a do or die situation, because if we don't go back to the previous pre-COVID period, we're never going to be going anywhere because the economy will go down. So here is a whole online assessment cycle where the whole practical as well as theory is going to be online. Here the practical part will be simulated. It will have a gamification process. It can have multiple choice questions, scenario based case study questions, all of that. So I'm just taking you through the process for you to understand how this is going to be enabled. So if you have a client who's going to ask, so you could be an SSC, you could be a training provider, and you will have, there are types of assessments that are happening. So there is a demand side. So the companies themselves can come to you as clients and say, hey, I want you to create an assessment for me. Then there could be training providers, colleges, universities, the government, the PMKY. They also come to an SSC and say, hey, I need you to enable the competency of this individual, identify it, assess it, qualify, and then certify. So when that assessment request comes in, it's a standardized sort of exam, or it will be a customized exam. Once that happens, as an SSC, most of us, we have a request for a MOU signing if it's customized, but otherwise if it's a standardized one, there are work orders, government notifications, PMKY, NSDC notifications, and we work appropriately. Once the agreement is signed off, then basically the individual starts his training process, but goes to the Skill India portal to basically get themselves registered. Now, if it's to be a totally online process without all of that intervention also, the payment also as in PMKY has to be made online. So in our SSC, we have anybody who requests makes an online payment. It is uploaded two ways, one on the Skill India portal, and also we have replicated and maintained an internal Skill India portal type and what you call as internal skill development management system. Then the whole assessment is scheduled online, so that between the SSC, the training provider, and the assessment agency, there's an online scheduling system. Once that is done by the SSC, the conversation is between the training provider as well as the assessment agency on finalizing the timelines. So any change in timelines, etc., dates of exams will be done without delay. Then there is a process, they can fix the exam on a particular day and it will be proctored, which will be that somebody is looking at you online, but it's an AI enabled, and it also can be without somebody looking, it is an auto proctored exam. There are various types of exams that can be done. I can do a diagnostic exam, or in the pink box I can see I can do a formative or a summative. Then the results are uploaded for all of this on the internal SDMS of the SSC as well as on the Skill India portal. A scorecard can be generated and certificates, and we can also as an SSC, because the whole process is online, give massive number of analytics. This goes as a feedback back to the clients, and then they will basically, and we also study it internally to keep improving the paper. So this is as the whole online assessment life cycle. Now, how is it being applicable in our situation? Here you can see assessment projects and stakeholders impacted. You have QP-NOS, school 10th, 11th, 12th, diagnostic, formative. So the assessment body is SSC, and then we are interacting with the individuals, with the institution, with the training provider, the faculty, the assessment agency, master trainers and trainers. All these come into cognizance, but now all of this will be an online enablement. this is the process for remote proctored assessments is like this. So you will see that there is a training provider who is on the top there. There's a payment through the SSC gateway. Creation of batch on the Skill India portal will happen, which is between the training provider and SSC, both have the responsibility. If you look at the second horizontal, you will see that there is an NSDC route, but then payment of batches, then the payment is validated, then there is a batch and candidate validation of Skill India, assigning to assessment agency, schedule is captured on the internal assessment process of the SSC if it's available. Then a mail is sent to the assessment agency, to the training provider, the training center for the conduct of assessments. Then the assessments are conducted. In the parallel, the assessment agency prepares the online exam, participant appears, there is a monitoring through Webcam Proctoring, then the whole assessment takes place, then the results are published both on the Skill India portal, and if you have an internal SDMS there also. Individual results and analytics can also be shared. So this captures the whole online process. Happy to share this with you to understand that it is pretty foolproof. And this is going on GRE, GMAT, TOEFL, TOEIC, SAT exams, massive exams. It can happen per day. You can almost hold up to 50,000 to 1 lakh assessments simultaneously without any problem. So it can reach the remote corners of the country, as well as it can also help various people understand how they will be able to ascertain whether their students are ready. You can counsel them basis that formative evaluation and then guide them into their learning program. So it becomes very important to have a diagnostic assessment of this nature. It is auto-proctored. It is very, very less expensive. And once you do the auto-proctoring, you really know the strength of the students. And then you go into an online training of students. And post the training, there is constant intervention with mentors who are going to be available, who are trainers or master trainers. And post the training period, you can have a summative evaluation again online. The whole life cycle becomes extremely light because there is very little expense incurred, which means more students can actually be trained, which means the economy of the country can really jumpstart with a big number. So these are some of the questions here, people, which we have got from various stakeholders. So they said when somebody goes online and does an exam, he's sitting in a room, his parents can be there, his friends can be there, he can open books, he can go into different browsers, he can try and cheat any way he can. So how do we do it? So there are 3 agencies who I have called out today. That will be Metal, CARB and AOR, who will also show you that they have their own proprietary tools on how they do. And these are the answers from them that we have gathered for you before we go on to the demonstration phase. So how does a malpractice like search solutions on the internet? Actually, the assessment engine which we have will have this tool, and it does not allow the student to toggle from one system to another. So you cannot move on. The moment it does, it flags and it lets you know, and it also lets the system, whether it's being looked at by some proctor or by the system itself, the AI engine will note that this person Sandhya is doing and she's trying to toggle out, and therefore it gives her flags. Every 2 or 3 flags later, some systems will shut down, but some take note and fail you after the exam because they say you looked too many places, you looked here, there, and you didn't do it. Seeking help from others. There is a credibility index. So if you move your face in a 320-degree angle, look up and down, or look somewhere else, it's able to note all this because the webcam will be always there, right? Identity risk. So there is a face recognition, and if somebody else sits in your place or you move away from your seat for a long time, it'll actually catch you out. Exposure to question bank. So you can't take screenshots. These sort of assessments, you can't take screenshots and then pass it on to others, because anytime you click it through a mobile or etc., the webcam will capture it and the test can be stopped immediately. Now, browsing other websites. So your secure browser is something that's available. It locks down and you cannot actually move it on your system and move from your assessment browser to some other browser. You using documents, tools, tutorials, ebooks, etc. Again, the secure browser locks down and the candidate will not be permitted to move here and there. Copy paste, that is also disabled because of the AI tool. Usage of screen share, any desk type tools to provide remote access. So the browser checks all background applications that are running and closes them before it starts the test. It will automatically do this. So the tool, which is called the secure browser, does all this. Plugging in of another monitor, keyboard, mouse to the existing system. You imagine all of this has been trialed and tested. So because of this, the test will not start unless the hardware is plugged off. Additional person along with the test taker. The system will raise a flag at every instant of an individual is visible through the camera. And sometimes if they're standing up in front of you, obviously you look up to see whether they are there and you then go look down. Quite often there is such a lot of intelligence built into this particular secure browser tool that you will find that the moment your head moves very differently, it has got intelligence to note that you're trying to cheat. So it will either shut down or it will raise a flag. Candidate not present in front of the system, this also takes note and tells you how long you've not been in the system. So you want to take a bio break, you want to go, then it will actually note it. But usually the screenshot of the candidate's desk screen is taken. So sometimes because of this, we don't shut the system down, but we have a sort of notification, and after the exam is over, that we will try to get back to the candidate to see what is the situation before we declare this person irresponsible and therefore fail the candidate. Look at another few more. Candidate authorization and authenticity. So the same human proctors continue to track. So sometimes very many clients, especially companies, want a human proctor also to look at the individual over and above the AI. But that is also possible. But the test cost is a little bit more than a remote proctoring where there is no human proctor. Now, multiple people in the room taking the test and talking to each other. So human proctors during the ask test takers to pick up the camera, laptop and show them the room. So this you can ask them. So this is a part of the process. If a human proctor is available, he can do this. We can also build into the system that you have to do this sort of a room coverage even in the remote proctoring. It will become a part. So they actually take note of it and all of this is pictured and passed on. So the weight of the whole deck is usually in terabytes, but we are able to conduct it. Usage of mobile. So if you use a mobile and it's spotted, then we are able to also, during the test assessment, take note of it, either raise a flag or close it down. IP change, restriction, geofencing. That means if you, it could be a cause of someone else logging from a different system. IP restriction will also be done if the candidates are supposed to take assessments from a common lab or some center. The test integrity, credibility index. It depends on the seriousness of the instance of such facts because these are built into the system. So automatically the system says this person is cheating and therefore declared fail. So these are the various malpractices and mitigation tools that we have. I'm now going to, we'll take a break here. I'm going to invite my colleagues one after another to give you real-time ideas of how things happen. And you can question them during their time, and post that we will have a general question and answer session. So if I may now invite Mr. Tarun from Mercer, if you could kindly take over, please.
Thank you, Dr. Sandhya, and welcome everyone. Thank you all for taking out time for this webinar. My name is Tarun and I represent Mercer Metal, and we've been working with ITSSC for past 4 years. While Dr. Sandhya has primarily covered most of the issues that happen or kind of flags that get raised during online assessment, there are a couple of points where I would want to add. Dr. Sandhya, if you could go to the next slide. Yeah, one big piece of making online assessments more credible and secure is candidate authentication. If Tarun is supposed to take the examination, how do I ensure it's Tarun who's taking the examination and it's not someone else? So authentication, like we do in a real world, forms a very important component of start making assessments more credible. We do it in multiple ways. Live images are captured, which is matched along with the pre-registration data, which is there on SIP. Apart from that, we can do email and OTP verification. But given the context of skill ecosystem, I think doing a live authentication is probably the best way of going forward. Browsing tolerance, which Dr. Sandhya spoke about, secure browser, which already covered. I'll probably share one slide on that. And what kind of proctoring and how proctoring, there's some snapshots here which will give you a taste of how proctoring happens in real life. Can you go to the next slide, ma'am? We could move to the next slide. Yeah, this is how authorization happens. On the left hand side is what candidate sees. It's a candidate experience. On the right hand side is what the proctor experience is. So what happens is during an assessment, the proctor gets to see a live image of the candidate. So candidate on the left hand side, you can see, needs to bring his face in the area which is demarcated, which gets captured as a proof that which candidate took an assessment, which the proctor or the invigilator can match with the live photograph which comes from SIP. On the right hand side, what you also show is how a candidate needs to submit his ID proof. Now this is a mandatory requirement in all skill schemes where candidates image and candidates authenticity needs to be verified. So this particular step, candidate's image and his ID proof gets captured as part of the process and is embedded with every candidate's test taking experience. It's part of the report. This is accessible whenever SSC or anyone else wants to look at it in future. Can you go to the next step? This is how a proctor sees a candidate. On the top, if you can see, these are the registration details that an AB gets. It comes from SIP portal. What he's seeing on the left is his live image. On the right, he's seeing his ID proof. All this information matches. Then only a proctor allows the candidate to take a test. So what you've essentially done is ensure that if Tarun was supposed to take the examination, it's Tarun who's getting into the system and taking the examination. Can we move ahead, ma'am? Now, once the right person has entered the system, the AI proctoring takes over. Now, like in a classroom where there are 15 students to invigilator or 10 students in invigilator, similar ratio could be created online wherein proctor can in live invigilate and have access to 10 to 15 candidates. What you see on screen are the tiles, which are live images getting refreshed every few seconds, which a proctor can see. And on the top left corner of every image, what you also get in live are the number of flags that are being generated by every test taker. So the proctor knows from which candidate more flags are being generated, and the proctor can click on that particular file and go and check individual candidate. Can we go to the next slide, ma'am? Yeah. So once he goes to an individual candidate, he can watch the candidate live. On the right hand side is what you see are the live flags that get generated through AI tool or through the system if the candidate has tried to reduce the window or try to shut down the test. What you also see on the screen are a lot of buttons which enable the proctor to have control over the assessment. At any point of time, if you see this button, he can move from candidate's view to the screen to look at what the candidate is trying to do on the screen. He can play back at any point of time. The proctor can chat with the candidate, ask him or her to focus on his assessment and not to look at any other means to assist him during the examination. This can be paused. The test can be ended as well. All these controls are there with the proctor remotely. Again, AI plays a very important role. Which candidate to look at, the cues, the hints comes from AI-based flags. which enables a proctor to more, to conduct his proctoring more effectively. For example, if you see in this slide, there are two people, flags get generated in case additional person is there. And it's not just even the face, even if partial body is visible in the screen. For example, if my shoulder is there or if some part of my body is visible on the screen, that also generates a flag. Again, there are multiple flags that get generated throughout the assessment, which is primarily driven by AI, and that supports a proctor to conduct his assessments more effectively. Just to add, this AI algorithm has been trained over 10 to 12 million images, which have happened, which have through assessments which have been done in last 2 to 3 years. Hence, the accuracy, the reliability of this AI tool proctoring is close to 95%. This is something on the data, how secure it is, and how do we ensure the personal information of test taker remains secured at all point of time. I think that's it from my side. If there are any questions, happy to take those questions. Dr. Sandhya, you are on mute.
Hello, is there any questions from anybody? It's about 3 minutes to go now. Otherwise, we will move on to the next presenter. Is it okay? Is there any questions coming up? NSDC, is there anybody coming up as a question at this particular juncture?
Dr. Sandhya, we do have questions, but they are more generic in nature and not specific.
So
we'll take it up later.
Yeah, so we'll continue with the presentation. So I'll just move on. Can you see the screen, all of you? Yes? Yeah, can you see the screen? Tarun, anybody? I'm just going on show. Yeah, yes, thank you. Just verify. Thank you. Now I invite Mr. Siddharth from Calm Services, and they have their own internal tool called HireMee. And this is again a company just like Metal, which has done extremely well with ISO standard certified, and they have this proprietary tool which they would like to demonstrate to you as capability. So over to you, Mr. Siddharth, please.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Sandhya ma'am, for the introduction and for the opportunity provided to present our online platform. So I would start with a brief about how the assessment process works, and it is a fairly simple process wherein the assessment request flows from NSDC and SSC to the Calm portal, and it is then sent across. It is then sent across to the candidates for various information like the assessment timing. Also, the instructions of the assessment are sent across to the candidate via email or SMS, depending on whatever is the possible way of communication with the candidate. And this can be done completely through the platform. There is no need for any external processes for that. Candidates can take the assessment from an app or a web, depending on what is their hardware or software availability which they have at their end, and then the results are auto-generated and are published to SSC or NSDC, depending on whatever is the format in which they are required. So this is the complete flow of how the request starts, and it goes back to NSDC along with the feedback, etc. So the next thing, which probably would be which is most important nowadays, is how do I make sure that the candidate is capable enough of taking an online assessment. In today's world, one of the major problems which we face is that the candidate do not have the requisite infrastructure to take the assessment. To make sure that we overcome that challenge, we have made sure that the system which we have built is extremely minimal in hardware and software requirement. Candidates can take the assessment using a simple smartphone. They can take the assessment. Using web on the web as well. Once they have started the assessment, the internet speed, bare minimum 3G speed is enough to take the assessment. Also, there is no installation, there is no extra webcam, which is no extra installation which is required during the assessment. As always, online assessments have the basic idea that there is no physical movement, there is a central control, and an AI is always watching the candidate at all times during the assessment. So the next thing which probably most of us try to mitigate or try to answer ourselves is how authentic are the online assessments. When I talk about authenticity, there are 2-3 things which come to our mind, is that how do I proctor them and how do I make sure that the exact correct question paper is given to every candidate which is taking the assessment. To that behalf, ma'am, can you go to the next slide, ma'am? Yeah, to that behalf, there are multiple levels of malpractice preventions which are there on the platform. One of them is the webcam proctoring, which we have discussed earlier as well, but I will like to touch upon it in a little bit more detail. So what we do is we switch on the webcam of the candidate, and the continuous stream of candidates snapshots are being streamed to an AI and ML algorithm. So what the system is doing is system is running an AI ML algorithm to do face detection and face recognition. The system will flag any impersonation based on the base image which was given to it, and also it will flag multiple people or no face during the assessment, or if there was any other malpractice which was discovered, like for example, too bright image or too less light in the image. So all these are detected by the AI and there are flag raised. Ma'am, can we go to the next screen? Yeah, so as you can see, the system will prompt that the face of the candidate is not visible. You have to have the face in the frame. All of that instructions are given to the candidate so that webcam proctoring makes sure that the candidate is always attentive towards the assessment. The second is the prevention of navigation away from the assessment, which is usually used to make sure that the candidate is always on the assessment and does not use any external help or tools for giving answers to the assessment. Ma'am, can we go to the next slide? Yeah, so as you can see, we track the number of navigations which the candidate does during the assessment, and at all times we keep on raising flags to the candidate as well that please don't navigate away. If the number of attempts of navigations are too high, we stop the assessment. And all of this is done almost without any manual intervention. The AI ML system is trained to make sure that it understands what the candidate is trying to do. If there is a system pop-up, it is detected, and if it is a messaging pop-up, then it is detected differently. So all of that is done. How we do once the candidate has completed the attempt, how we report things is there are 3 reports which are generated. One is an individual report which is in the PDF and HTML format. The other is a batch report which can come in Excel and in PDF. The third is a proctoring report. One of the most important things, because all the flags, timestamps, all the event logs, everything about the assessment is given in the proctoring report with the flags. So informed decision can be taken whether the attempt was actually authentic or not. So the system takes care of all of this using the AI ML, and at the end we can also send across the PC, NOS-wise, QP-based results in the JSON format to NSDC or SSC as well. Ma'am, next slide, please. Yeah, so at the end, I would like to touch upon a few more points. As I said, the system are as strong as the weakest link. So we have tried to make sure that all our systems are inherently have the best security standards. We are ISO 9001, ISMS 27001, and CMMI L3 compliant, which are some of the industry standards, world standards for security of data, etc. Our servers run through VAPT scans on a regular basis, making sure that there is absolutely no chances of a breach of data or security on the servers. The system, the AI and ML model has been created to train itself. So basically, whenever I am doing an attempt, whenever I am any candidate is taking an attempt, the AI system is learning from the attempt and it is becoming smarter. If I detect a mobile today in object detection, tomorrow the model will train itself to identify that kind of an object in the frame. So that is also enhancing. We have completed over 1.6 lakhs AI proctored attempts, which have absolutely no manual intervention. 100% proctoring was done by the AI ML system to make sure that there was no malpractice which happened. And at the end, the systems are all running in a fail-safe mode. Even if there is hardware and software malfunction, or there is any interruption in the assessment, there is no loss of attempt data. At all times, the system is keeping track of what the assessment is going on, how the candidates are working, what is the current stage, what is the timing, etc. Everything is stored. There is no loss of attempt data. So with this, I would like to close my presentation. These are the points I wanted to convey. And Dr. Sandhya ma'am, thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you so much for everyone's time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Any questions at this point for Siddharth, or should we move on to Mr. Dhruv? NSDC, would you like to kindly give us some sort of guidance here? There are questions which are...
Dr. Sandhya, let's go ahead with the third
Sure.
presenter. We'll take your questions.
Thank you so much. So let me now invite Dhruv from Aeon to actually make his presentation. Dhruv, once again, is a very well-known company who is also a ISO standard certified company, which has done and has built its own, what do you call it, AI-enabled tool, which is called Eye in the Sky. So over to you, Dhruv.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Sandhya. And I think thanks a lot, everyone. I think though Tarun and Siddharth covered most of the points, I would like to just basically put out 2 or 3 major burning questions which has been coming out in the recent past, and basically how we can solve that. So for example, how online assessments can basically control malpractices. Second was that, hey, how in villages or rural areas or tier 4 cities we can do these assessments with the minimum and very low internet bandwidth. And more importantly, how a candidate experience will move on, and will the candidate suffers from a problem while he is conducting the assessment. So I think critical, and I think most importantly, it is, and while I will talk about theory as well as the practical assessments, it is important to understand that the experience of candidate of how he currently gives theory assessment to how we now perceive it in a post-COVID scenario, the candidate experience doesn't change. So while he is appearing for the assessment, let's say on a mobile or a tablet, all that is possible. So his experience doesn't get changed. What we are doing and all agencies are talking about is where we are saying that, hey, at the back end, there will be artificial intelligence to monitor all these points through which basically cheating can be controlled and malpractices can be reduced. So I will not take too much time here, considering most of these points were covered, but just to pinpoint few critical ones. One is any candidate who starts, let's say if I am starting the assessment, it will detect my face, and let's say if in between somebody else sits in, it will capture that. Multiple faces again will be visible. Very critical point here is real-time video and audio feed, which means basically that for entire time of a theory assessment, the audio as well as the video of the candidate feed will be absolutely captured, and that will also come. So basically all these 7 points that I'll be talking about has a violation score at the end, and that final violation score can basically give us a rating of whether the candidate was trying to cheat or whether he was doing his job perfectly fine. When I say object detection basically means, let's say if a candidate is basically using his mobile or any other object during the assessment, that will be captured. Multiple login basically means if I am appearing for the assessment, I feel, let's say, Tarun is better than me in terms of basically appearing for this assessment. I gave my login ID and password to him. He logs in, it will be captured through AI. Another very interesting is answer behavior. I think this was a very common request that we used to get in the normal days of assessment that we do, is sometimes where assessor or training partners might want to help a candidate to appear for the assessment. The AI now basically detects that, hey, let's say if 10 questions are being answered in a same sequence and answered correctly, even that can be captured. On the low internet bandwidth, and I see a lot of questions coming out on how this will happen in rural areas or in villages. I think very critical point to note here is that the assessment and the online monitoring requires only 64 kbps as a speed, and which usually works if I have to put it very simply for everybody to understand this, like if somebody has a 2G on his mobile network, he will be able to appear for the assessment and basically online monitoring can happen. Dr. Sandhya, we can move to the next one. Yeah, so I think this is more on how the outcome report looks like. So when we do it in volume, of course, there's an Excel sheet that can come out, which can mark those candidates who are above the violation score. What we have done is there's a 0 to 5 rating scale. Anybody who is above 3 will be marked on the violation score parameter, and that will be pointed out. So for all candidates, this is how in every 30 seconds, images will be captured. And all the points that you see here, for example, impersonation or object detection, this will be captured so that we, of course, don't want to log out any candidate directly. But while we are assessing any candidate's performance from an AI perspective, we can go back, see the PDF report, and basically check that what was the reason for these flags coming out. Yeah, so I think these are the points, the 7 points I was talking about. Dr. Sandhya, we can move to the next one. I would like to cover the practical aspect once. So yeah, I think these are all the points, 7 points that being captured, and this becomes a final role for the violation score while we capture the AI-based tool, which is called as Eye in the Sky 2.0. Okay, and I think I would like to take 2 minutes on this, and I think this again has been a very burning question, and I see a lot of questions coming in the webinar on how practical assessments will happen. How, let's say, a service-based or a manufacturing-based practical assessment will happen. We can use a tool like, let's say, how we are currently connected in Teams, but video recording becomes a problem. So how those things can happen? So very simple. We have basically brainstormed this internally a while back and has come back with a tool called as Aeon Live. What we do is the setup remains very simpler. Like the way you have received a WebEx link or a Teams link, similarly, an assessor and a candidate will receive those 2 links. They will schedule the assessment, start the video assessment. Assessor will ask all the questions in the similar way how it is currently being done in a rubrics format. And the videos of each and every candidate can get stored in the backend.
Shall I move the next?
Yeah, Dr. Sandhya, we can move in the next one.
Yeah.
We can even move into the next slide and basically show how this actually looks like. So, Steam, if you're looking at the screen right now, what has been changed is that assessor as well as candidate, both the windows will be visible. On the right side, assessor can see the questions. These questions will be practical, scenario, role-based, specific questions that can be asked to a candidate to perform. And while a candidate is performing, and I'll just take a quick simple example. Let's say if a plumber has to basically join 3 pipes, the plumber can also share his screen towards the activity that he is doing. And while he do that, it will get captured, while the final tool that comes out, that will get captured, and the assessor will basically rate the candidate on the scores that come out. We have also kept chat box as a feasibility because sometimes if network doesn't work, that becomes a problem. So a chat box will also be there where assessor can basically, or candidate can ask the questions, and that can be solved. Now we can move to the next one. And I think, again, a very interesting one here, team, is that this doesn't also require too much of internet bandwidth. I think this was, again, a very common query that has come out. 512 kbps is what it requires. Even it works at 256 kbps. But on a safer side, this is what we basically minimal need, which usually work. So I think before I move to these 4 points, I think how we perceive this tool is not just for now, even for the post-COVID scenario, what all benefits it can actually give us. One, we don't have to use a Zoom or a WebEx tool to basically do this. Considering video recording becomes a problem, all these videos for audit purpose remains with us. That's one. Second, I think in a normal days, we had a lot of batch cancellation problems, travel challenges of assessors, last minute backouts. I think all those can be controlled if assessors, let's say, sit in our office or do these assessments from a take from home scenario. Malpractices, of course, can be reduced when we don't have on the ground connect between the teams. And very, very critical is the quality of assessments. Considering we now have the video records, we can have a bunch of key critical assessors, qualified assessor who can also multiple times audit the process and give the rating to the candidate. And then most importantly, we know that the assessor is being monitored for the whole time and he's being captured in a video, he becomes more conscious and the process of entire assessments becomes more credible.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Dhruv. Thank you very much. So now it's question and answer session from all of you. I hope all of you have liked the whole program, have understood what we are trying to convey to you, but we are now open to question answers from your end. So NSDC team, if you could direct the questions to the team and I, so we would collaboratively try and provide the answers for this. So we have ample time because it was meant to be an interactive session. We did do a bit of a dry run at the first part, and but now you really see how those 17 points of malpractice have been so independently but collectively articulated by the 3 assessment agencies, that is
Right. Thank you.
Over to you, Bhumika. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Sandhya and Dhruv, Taro, and Siddharth for sharing information on online assessment and proctoring tools. There are a set of common questions that are coming up, and I have kind of bunched it together, and I'll be putting it across to you.
Sure. If you could read it out.
So the common question coming up, right? How to assess practical component or the competencies, hard skill, especially in sectors that are manufacturing primarily in nature, or that are traditional in nature, how to assess these, practical competencies online, and how can online tools help with these type of assessments?
So Dhruv did touch upon it, but Tarun, do you also want to address it? Tarun, yeah, please.
Yeah. So, Bhumika, honestly, I think where hard skills are required on ground, where machines need to be, people need to work on a machine to show their competencies. I think it's a challenge. I think these questions are valid. But having said that, once the situation eases out a bit, candidates can still be at the test center, and assessors can observe, review, and ask questions remotely. But if these assessments have to be done in current scenario where there is a lockdown, I think, and that's my understanding, I think we need to relook at the assessment criteria and that assessment blueprint. I don't think in current scenario all manufacturing job roles could be conducted online. So we need to look at how we need to assess candidates going forward till the lockdown remains. Maybe it becomes a much more detailed Viva Q&A where detailed steps are asked, from every candidate, and then maybe assessments are scheduled in a way that instead of 1 day, because an assessor is spending more time with a particular candidate, gets stretched to 2 days. But yes, the assessment criteria needs to be looked at.
So I would beg to differ here. Thanks for bringing them up, Tarun. But looking at specifically on a manufacturing practical component. So suppose the COVID doesn't go away in another 2 years, does it mean that we're not going to be able to evolve assessments? Throughout the world, the changes have happened where classes are running through TV screens, classes are running through cell phones and websites. So we have to look at assessments. So Dhruv, would you like to put, because you did touch upon the manufacturing part, and Siddharth, if you also have subsequently to articulate, because there is to be a real-time video session. It's the same process, but the whole process of while he's practically showcasing competency on a manufacturing role, the thing is, if he's able to do it at his at a site, which means he has to go to that place, he needs to have that instrumentation or the required manufacturing tools. So if it is not there, is there a simulation possibility that can happen, Dhruv and Siddharth, that can make this work, where he can intervene? Because I can really fly a plane by learning on a simulator. So if that capability is there, can we actually articulate this through a simulation process to see whether the individual is able to at least 70 to 80%, and you will be able to articulate, say, yes, he's competent to do the welding piece, or he's competent to do the manufacturing outcome piece. Over to you, Dhruv and Siddharth.
Yeah, Dr. Sandhya. So Dhruv, this side. So basically what I think this is a burning question that we also internally have been brainstorming a lot. What we feel currently is, let's say for service roles, this is something that can be done through a Viva-based process and through a video-based tool process. For manufacturing roles, the one way out to basically look at, because let's say if there are instruments required to basically being for a candidate to being assessed, and if he's sitting at home, there's a difficulty in that.
Yes,
but if the candidate goes to the center, yes, it can be done through a AI-based tool. The alternatives and one of the solutions that we look forward, and I think we have been also speaking to a few skill councils around this, is where if the questions, the practical questions, can be shifted to a, let's say, a scenario-based question or a role-based question, where it will be more towards a Viva scenario and the candidate has to basically ask, the candidate has to do a task, and that will be monitored.
So putting this back to the three of you, so suppose I have that whole manufacturing process and I interject it with minor videos of it, or there will be pictorials which are captured, and I'm able to intervene with it either with a gamification process or is it a simulation. Then he can actually enact the process or articulate which is right and wrong, what is the level of error in that particular activity which is being done in the manufacturing space, which will give you an idea whether he understands and is able to competently do it. So is that a feasibility that you have involved with the situation? Over to Tarun. Yes, sir.
I agree with that, ma'am, and that's what I mentioned, that would require changing in the assessment blueprint, the way we are currently doing it, and then if you want to do it online, what other tools can we bring on the table and assess candidates. Right. The challenge here is nothing has been done in that space till now, at least in India. There are no effective reliability studies which can say that if I do something on a machine, will I be as effective on ground or not? I don't know. I have not gone through those studies. But having said that, my understanding is in due course of time, students might be allowed to go to centers. That would solve part of the problem. But till the time students are not going to the center, we need to relook at our assessment blueprint and assess candidates based more on situation-based test, the videos that you're saying, images, the type of questions that we ask, the kind of question that we ask, those will change. But yes, again, that's my personal take. It might not be as effective as we do in actual world.
So let me give you a bit of research to three of you, because I do a lot of this particular type of work. So suppose I want to walk a tightrope or wait. Now we have AVR tools, augmented virtual reality. If I'm able to experience it, the neural networks actually through an augmented virtual reality tool are able to experience that manufacturing protocol. And we have found that from a virtual reality simulation to a real-time conversion, the conversion is 90%. And the time and effect is faster, that he might take 6 months to perfect it. But if I'm able to perfect him online simulator, either whether it is an online simulator or it is a simulator where he can practically sit in it, then again the conversion is 90%. So it is found to be very, very effective, faster and more accurate and less expensive. So it is definitely a feasibility that can be enacted out there, but it needs to see what is the will and rigor, because if you feel that once the COVID is down, then we can go back to them, especially for manufacturing, we'll have to go real time. But for all other learning purposes, for evaluating competency, this is found to be pretty effective, and I would happy to converse with others on this so as to see if you can present us situations right to NSDC and to us. We'll actually try to find solutions for it, which might be a path-breaking scenario which will work for the assessment agencies to make it as a tool to way forward. Next question, please. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, just to add.
Sandhya and the presenters to take up. Okay, yeah, sorry, please go ahead.
Just a quick addition here, ma'am. For most of the services job roles and in sectors like IT, retail, BFSI, life science and sales services job roles, the entire process can immediately move online. I don't think there is any stopping those sectors, those kind of job roles.
But I'm just saying is that there's feasibly there are enough studies that somebody who's learning to walk a tightrope. Now, when they walk through an AVR process and they had those goggles on and they saw themselves walking, actually the body balances is in the brain. So between that, the neural networks are connecting on the balance. So when you put the person on a real-time tightrope, the 90% conversion is happening. It's an amazing process, but it seems to be that the practice of balance and everything can be simulated, and the learning can happen multiple ways by one model instructor rather than have multi. So this also eliminates the need for multiple master trainers and trainers, because I can simulate the whole thing to an AVR process. So there are studies, happy to share, and we will make this work. Over to the next question, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is that given the Indian landscape, how do we administer online assessment for less educated and digitally inept environments?
So, Kam, would you like to take that? You have done a lot of remote proctoring. Would you like to take it?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Definitely. So I would like to like to throw a little bit light on how we overcame the scenario. Usually what we do is we don't want any manual intervention into the assessments landscape, and our audience is usually from tier 2 and tier 3 colleges, and sometimes the digital knowledge of the candidates is not very high. So what we usually do is we try to make the platform as simple as possible in the first place to understand. That's one of them. Second is we try to use a little bit of vernacular languages, Hindi. We try to give the assessments in them so that it is easier for them to understand what is the instructions which are being given. Also, we give them mock assessments before the actual assessment. So even though the person is not digitally very equipped in the first go, but still he can run 2-3 mock assessments, be sure that he's capable of running the online assessments, and then take up the assessments with equal confidence of what probably he would have done in paper and pen. So those are 2-3 ways in which we have tried overcoming it. It's a problem, I agree, but we have tried overcoming it to the best possible manner.
So one of the things is all the online assessments have a toggle capability. This is for those of you who answered. So all the 3 assessment agencies and the others we have with us will be able to offer their programs in almost 5 to 6 to 10, 14 Indian languages. You have to let them know in advance so they can see the assessment in Hindi, they can see it in Malayalam, they can see it in Tamil, Gujarati, Bengali. So the understanding is there. Though NSDC has instructed us that they should answer in English because that is important. That gives them the mobility within the country as well as abroad. So answering it, but they can understand it better. Moreover, this is a very low bandwidth exam, even in the villages, etc. 2G and 3G. So 3G is now, 2G is almost non-existent. Everybody has a phone which has at least 3G. So it's a very lightweight exam, can be taken, and they can understand it in the local language. Any other points from Dhruv and Tarun on this particular question?
One of the one of the points of this question was lack of digital literacy. I think that is something we need to overcome in some sectors specifically, which would mean that during the training, there is some digital literacy that needs to be provided to the candidates, which could be done by the training partners, which could be done through the means of giving sample assessments to the candidates, that while they're getting trained, they look at how assessments are happening, so that when the end assessments happen, they're not enough for a surprise. They are aware of the platform and the environment.
Perfect. So we can actually make small videos and also have people participate. So even platforms like Cisco, Google, and you have IBM, all of them have this training, 1 day, 2 days, 2 hours training sessions for trainers, master trainers, students who can actually know how to onboard, how to do this. So these sort of demo assessment processes that they can participate in, as Siddharth from CAM has said, we can make available. Dhruv, have you got any other tool or idea that you can help people to get digitally literate, because they have not been using the system? Obviously, a gardener or a plumber would not have used it. But since I found that they are actually very savvy on WhatsApp and they know how to communicate, because now a cell phone seems to be a part of the life. But how to use this, I'm sure we could have a small video session made available with the help of NSDC and perpetuated to everybody to trial it out. Any ideas from your end?
I agree, Dr. Sandhya. I think people are now more tech savvy, even when we look at rural areas and tier 4 cities. But I also agree to the point that digital literacy is critical, and the best way to basically move away with this is that we have a quick orientation video, can be like a 2-minute orientation video, which just makes the candidates more comfortable with the platform. And as I said, from a digital perspective of how assessments can happen, for a theory assessment, it requires only 64 kbps as a speed to run the assessment well. So from that perspective, candidate experience will not get hampered. But I agree, I think a small quick orientation will do the job.
Yeah, because we do from NASCOM Foundation also, we do a lot of digital literacy. So that whole module of work, I would basically forward it so that NSDC could make this a norm to make it available to everybody. Thank you so much. Next question, please.
Sure. So these are very important points coming up through the questions. I'll go to the next question, which is basically people are asking about what provisions can we leverage for addressing candidates with, physical disability or they are physically challenged.
So the three of you might have done some assessments for people with physical disability. So anybody who has got that experience? Tarun, have you got that?
Yeah. So we are already working with Skill Council for people with disability, and assessments are being done as of today. Our experience is there are ways and means to manage it, but there is some assistance required on ground where vision or there are some other issues. So honestly, I don't have answer to it right now.
So I would give you an Dhruv, do you have an answer that you have done anything before I answer?
Yeah, Dr. Sandhya. So I think we are in touch with the Skill Council for Disability. And I think the two parts to it, one that there are special candidates who have locomotive disability. And I think while our discussion, this looks like a possibility where we can do a practical video-based or a theory-based assessment. But there are few disabilities or special students where there's a hearing disablement or there's a vision disablement. So for hearing disablement, the questions can be such a way that where he presses the question and there's a voice also that comes out, which basically helps the candidate. Now, of course, for those candidates, if there's an on-the-ground proctor, definitely there will be a great help compared to a scenario where they are taking the assessment online. But I think assessor orientation for those candidates will become and make a key part. And while we do any assessments for special candidates, I think there should be a proper separate training and orientation for assessors on how to basically move forward, apart from technology as well.
So because I would agree with you in that part, because the online remote proctoring process, we need to have the proctor there so that it's not going to be an auto proctored assessment, but a remote proctoring assessment. So there is a person who can actually help the disabled individual. But if there is a hearing impairment or a sight impairment, then there is going to be a problem. So how the questions go out in Braille, can the phones that these people have or the iPads that they have are enabled for them to basically respond to you is a question that has to be done. But even if there is a video, how do we do it? Some of the instances I've seen that they have used TV screens. So like a Doordarshan screen that has gone out on the television, a particular date and time has been given, and they have been permitted to have helpers around them to do it. But the whole thing is that they've used two instruments. One is their cell phone or an iPad or a laptop if they have at home, which is a webcam enabled piece, which continuously monitors what they're doing, because there are 2 or 3 people helping this individual. But the persons collectively can see this on the TV screen if they don't have an iPad, but just a cell phone. So these are processes that are being looked at right now. Happy to collaborate with the NSDC, all of us, to see what we can do the best to enable if the COVID period and the new normal comes to stay.
Sure. So, yeah, that's a fair, valid point, Dr. Sandhya. Move on to the next question, which I think was largely covered the one before that, which talks about language compatibility.
Yeah.
So I think we've covered language compatibility. We move on to the next question, which is about availability of IT infra, where students especially would not have smartphones because they've gone back to their places or it's just not available with them, or the other required devices that are needed to take the assessment.
So anybody would like to try before I pitch it? Siddharth, Tarun, Dhruv? So they don't have a smartphone. They don't have a smartphone. So what do they do with that?
Yeah, I mean, just in case if the infra required to really take the online assessment is unavailable at their end. So I understand there's not much that one can do remotely about it. It's also the responsibility of the student to really take the initiative and make sure that the required bare minimum requirement on IT infra is available. But I leave the question for the presenters to talk about it.
So basically, there are some new innovations that are coming in where your television screen or some aspects are specifically every home seems to have it, is going to be enabled with the capability having an app which you download it is also going to be able to give you a visual of the screen, and it will be just behaving like a cell phone or a tablet. But that is still to come to be in our regular homes. But otherwise, that is a feasibility that is available all around the place. But without the smartphone presently, it's a little difficult to make these things work.
Sure. So moving on to the next question, we have a question which asks about in case the assessment of a candidate is cancelled due to malpractice and the candidate raises a complaint, will we have video photographic evidences to prove the occurrence of the malpractice? So are there enough evidences, recorded data analytics available to prove the occurrence of malpractice?
So Siddharth, would you like to take that, and then we'll throw in Tarun will chip in?
Yes, ma'am. During my presentation, as I said, we switch on the webcam of the candidate and we continuously stream the images to the server. So yes, we do have evidence of what the candidate was doing at all times, and we also capture what the screen movement of the candidate was. So we have comprehensive analysis of what the candidate was doing along with the timestamps. So we have an event log which clearly states that what was the candidate's position during this time in the assessment. So we have a complete log that's a downloadable file which we provide in proctoring. We can also give the data dump if further analysis needs to be done. But yes, we have complete analysis of what the candidate was doing, what was his position, what was his images being recorded, what was the screen which was being seen by the candidate. So we have all that information with us at our end. We do analyze it using the AI system. If a flag is raised, we also tend to sometimes give manual intervention to it, but usually it is the AI which decides what is going on. But we have all the information with us.
But you have disclaimers which provides you the access to all that information being shared if requested, right? If NSDC wants to say, is there a malpractice, then you can share all this video content, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We have.
Yeah, ma'am. I think to answer this question, I think the first step is defining the SOP. Right. As an assessment body based out of experience, we could share what kind of issues that happen on ground or while students are taking online assessment. And against each of these issues, we could clearly define a matrix or an SOP, what action needs to be taken. The training partner needs to be aware of it at all point of time. The SSC needs to be aware of it. And then accordingly, people are trained to take appropriate action based on the level of behavior that happens during the assessment. But having said that, there's a complete audit trail that is available at all point of time. Anyone can go back and refer that for further due diligence.
Well, Dhruv, do you have any other idea which you would like to reinforce?
Yeah, I think for both theory and practical, this can be done. For theory, we will have a final violation score, as I was sharing, and all the 7 to 8 pointers which Sector Skill Council or NSDC finally finalized, that hey, all these things becomes a critical part of the guideline. Those can be captured, and a PDF report of those specific candidates can be captured. For practical assessments, it's all video recorded. So I think from a proof perspective, it's all available and can be used for later audit purpose.
Yeah, because before, when you had a face-to-face exam, it was not always recorded. Here, everything will be recorded because you're all seeing them on the webcam all the time.
Absolutely.
So therefore, the level of malpractice will be very minimal. Assessor malpractice, what do you call it, complaints will reduce drastically. Both the assessor as well as the student will be videoed. Both somebody who's asking and somebody who's receiving, both will be on video. So there's very little opportunity for this malpractice to come across. The other, thank you so much for that. But the other point, remember we had earlier on was saying when they don't have a smartphone. I just want to mention there are now companies coming up that are renting smartphones for assessments. So they say you don't have it because it's expensive. For as cheap as 50 through a courier service, they send you their cell phone on that particular day, and you can trial it out or keep it for a week and then return it. So these are ways in which people are trying to find business opportunities at a time of constraint. So if I say in a remote village they don't have, somebody has told me, yes, I can rent it out, and I have 1,000 phones at any one time that I can rent it to any place. So he includes a courier charge, bulk services, he gives it to the local person and they distribute it out for a particular time and then they return it. So that's how they're running. It's all Paytm played, and then they also have an insurance, so it's covered with insurance. So what I'm trying to say, ladies and gentlemen, this is an opportunity where we can ride the wave with new ideas and new innovations. So if there is any other question from your side, Bhumika, that you think is critical, or should we allow from your end?
I think we can take one last question. There are many, but what we can do is we can take answers from you all later and share with others. But the last question that we would like to take today is that do digital assessments have competency to give results within the stipulated time? I think we have covered it. But if the presenters would like to throw more light on it and tell us about the advantages, that would be great.
So starting with you, Dhruv, what is the time frame when somebody completes an online exam? When do you get the result? ASAP? As soon as he finishes the exam?
Important is that from a assessment perspective, how a candidate experiences or how a backend result generates, that doesn't change. So earlier also the results was instantaneous within a click of button that can be generated, and that can be then put in a format of SDMS and SIP upload. So that doesn't change. I think what has been added on and what Dr. Sandhya has been putting it out is that, hey, there are multiple ways of online checks and AI-based checks that has been added up. From a result uploading perspective, the process remains same.
So what will happen here is basically the student will get a result, but the online red flags that come up where somebody is actually found to be cheating, and whether it in a scale of 0 to 5, whether this person is considered okay for the results to be released or for the person to be failed because of malpractice. How much time does that take? So
Dr. that comes out with the result itself. So for example, while we download the Excel sheet, let's say for 1,000 candidates assessment appears, 20 candidates are above the red flag. They will be marked red. And that can be shared with the respective sector skill council, where they can take a final call of reassessment or maybe basically discussion with the particular candidate. All that can happen, and we can form a guidelines around that.
Right. So what about you, Tarun? How does your system operate on this particular aspect of immediate results being generated?
It's similar, ma'am. I think the results get generated immediately. I think the delay that happens is primarily because there are a lot of SOP and audit related work that we need to do prior to uploading the result on SDMS. But I don't think they'll take much time. The result generation.
So suppose I now use my cell phone, and I'll ask that also, is when you use a laptop or cell phone and do the exam, I can see the scorecard on my results straight away as soon as I click the submit button.
If you want to show the student the results, it can be done immediately.
Yes, and then you can have this on a server where it goes uploads time, because it's browser based. It has to be only if it's a LAN based process, then you have to actually cumulatively let it go there, and then it immediately can download the scorecard, and the certification of course depends on the Skill India portal's compatibility, but otherwise the individual can see the score. My question is, if they can see it, can they also store it immediately? So they can click of a button, they can take a screenshot of it and keep it and use it. How is that?
They can do it, but I'm not sure if we would want to use that as a final scorecard, because again, if we are doing an audit at the backend post assessment to look at what kind of suspicious behavior happened, and basis our SSC guidelines or NSDC's guidelines, if some action has to be taken, probably that result might not be valid anymore. So again, that process has to be discussed. Having said that, that capability to show the result instantaneously at the candidate's screen after the assessment has happened. That is there. They can use that scorecard. It's always there. But again, how we use that, how it gets manifested, and how what are the next steps to it, I think that detailed discussion needs to happen around the SOP.
Sure. Siddharth, do you have any points on this? Any particular note on this particular scenario?
Yeah, ma'am. Sometimes, most of the times what we do is we do get an instantaneous report, as Dhruv and Tarun has said. We do get an instant report. We have the capability of displaying it also. But as you said, we try not to do that because we have red flags which we need to monitor. The screening of the images is being done real time. The AI is running real time. Flags are being raised real time. But the final assessment go no go is decided at the end. So that is why the scores are available to be presented right at the click of the submit button. But yes, we have certain audit trails, certain SOPs to be completed before we release the results. So the capability exists.
Very good. So all of you have that. So the point is, when they finish the exam, I click the button, and as soon as I see what is the time lag between clicking the button and seeing the result, and for you to say this is a confirmed result, 2 hours, 3 hours, 24 hours?
Dr. Sandhya, I'm afraid we would have to quickly
yes. This is the
last.
This is the last one. So because that's answers. So it looks like NSDC, with regards to this particular question, we have to discuss to come up with some governance norms to say once somebody gets an assessment result, as soon as he finishes, he can see the score with the disclaimer saying that the final results will be subject to other aspects of malpractice or scenarios. We'll have to do those wordings very carefully so that it gives a time to give us a quality output without being questioned further. So thanks for this opportunity, and Ms. Vandana, Bhumika, Rekha and Meher. I hope the audience did have some information that they could digest and then probably use it very well. And thank you once again, my co-panelists, Mr. Siddharth from PALM and HireMee, Mr. Dhruv from Aeon, and from the tool called Eye in the Sky, and Tarun from Metal Induslink. Thank you so much.
Thank you. On behalf of NSDC, we would like to thank you, Dr. Sandhya, for sharing insights on the online assessments, typology, life cycle, workflow, and proctoring solutions, along with our presenters from Metal, Aeon Cubes and CoCubes and Calm Technology Solutions. Once again, we are thankful to you all. We hope our audience had gained enough knowledge on online assessments and proctoring tools. And we are thankful for our audience to have asked right questions, and these are very relevant, and we could discuss it and had some very interesting observations and the points that we can work on going forward. We would try to have the answers we would try to have the questions answered today, which were unattended. We will get back to the audience later. And if there are more questions, you could leave it in the Q&A panel. And we also request our attendees to share a quick feedback via the link that has been shared on the chat on the right panel of your screen. This should not take more than 2 minutes for you to answer. It would be really helpful for us to know what you think about the webinar and your views on the online assessment as well. On this note, we end this webinar. Once again, thanking and wishing you all to stay safe and in good health. With this, Team NSDC signing off. Thank you
so much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.